Otherwise, we'll bring John McMullen into the conversation right now. As what's going on, John?
Not much. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. It's we're at Thursday, the Combine, and it seems that a lot of stuff going on out there with free agency. A lot of all the teams seemingly having their representatives out there and speak. But I want to ask you something we haven't talked a whole heck of a lot about is the draft, and that's what the Combine is for. But I wanted to kind of get into to start here. The different Combine. There's a lot of different stuff going on at the Combine, but this is kind of the kickoff of the offseason, right? This is kind of where the GMs and you start to hear the talk and all the crazy season begins.
Yeah, because all the agents are out there with their players and obviously all the teams, although it has shifted a little bit, obviously. Vic Fangio was the first. He said, assistant coaches don't need to be here. Sean McVay kind of follows. I think you're going to see more of that copied around the rest of the league, although the league itself is going to be upset by that because they want to project this as an important event. And it is important. I don't want to downplay it. But the important part isn't what you're going to see on television, and that's the so-called underwear Olympics. The important part is the medical exams, in the interviews where you get to meet the prospects from a team standpoint. So the actual drills and all that stuff you're going to be watching on TV, a little whisper, it's really not that important.
Well, you don't think Joe Burrow's hand size matters?
Well, he's got small hands. And he made obviously a joke about it, said he's going to retire. No, I mean, it's meaningful in the fact, but from a scouting standpoint, I talked to a lot of scouts. They're just looking to reinforce what they already know. In other words, you have to have a certain level of athletic ability to play in this league. And over the years, they've developed a framework for different positions, and they use that as to reinforce what they've seen on the film. What they're looking at is the film. Now, if you're a good player and you're a wide receiver and you run a 4.7, well, that's going to be an issue for you. But, people know Henry Ruggs, for instance, is fast. He's going to show how fast he is, and everybody's going to know that. You just check off the box, and you move on. It's about how you play. It's about the film more than anything else. And obviously what I said, the medical exam, that's very important, certainly for players that were injured like Tua. And then obviously you get to sit down with prospects and learn a little bit about them. So that's the big takeaways from the scouting side of it is that. It's not the actual drills or the bench press or anything like that.
No. And the Combine's going on, but a lot of the news is happening out there. One of the things that is, we've talked a lot about this CBA. We've talked a lot about what's going to be happening with it, but some of the things in there, the choosing between the franchise and the transition tag, that to me is interesting because they would have one tag. So you're essentially getting rid of one or the other. Would they morph them together? Like what is the wording that they're trying to get out or that they want to get solidify? You don't ever see the transition tag, so there's almost no need for that. But would they modify what the franchise tag is and what the transition tag is and kind of morph them together in some capacity?
Well, you're talking with the new CBA. Remember, it's not ratified yet. So this is the deadline. It's really 4:00. So as we speak, to name your franchise and transition players. And in the last year of the CBA, the rules are different. You can have two tags. So as we stand today, everybody can have two tags if they want them. You could have two transition, or you can have one franchise and one transition. And that will differ under the new CBA when it gets ratified. So the bigger question is, what are they going to do if some team does use two tags? Are they going to roll one back and say you can't tag that person, or are they going to grandfather it in? From everything I've heard, they're going to roll it back. So if you do see a team tagging two people, they're going to have to make a quick decision once this thing gets ratified, and I do think it will get ratified, and they're going to have to take one of those tags off, or obviously they can work out a contract deal with that particular player. So there's a lot of questions because the CBA is not done yet. And even with the Tom Brady news you heard today,
the
Patriots, the Patriots aren't negotiating with them because they don't know the rules yet.
Right, because
so everybody's waiting for the new CBA.
Yeah, if and when this new CBA is ratified, the terms would take place immediately, forcing teams to then choose between the two. This would have an impact on, multiple extension I mean, I would imagine a guy, let's say like Cooper, right? He would be in this kind of situation.
Yeah, Dak, and you're going to have to franchise Dak, obviously, if you're the Cowboys. And you have two tags as we speak today. So they can franchise one and transition the other if they so choose. But then if they do ratify it, as I said, they're going to have to make a decision, or they're going to have to work out a deal with, say, Amari, and then franchise Dak Prescott, which would be the logical way you would think it would go, if they want them both. And these are all questions, but as of today, you can have the two tags, but ultimately when this thing does get passed, and as I said, I do think it will, they're going to take that away from you. So it's only going to be a very short time.
Yeah, that's an interesting conundrum some of these teams in. According to Pro Football Talk, CBA includes several devices that will de-incentivize players under contract from missing training camp. So this could be something that affects, I guess, a guy like Malcolm Jenkins, right? They're reporting that daily fines for holding out would be substantially increased from the current maximum of $40,000. I don't know why the players would agree to that.
Well, remember, at the last CBA, the 2011 CBA, essentially eliminated holdouts. Very rare they are now, and they want to go even further, and that would completely eliminate them, because the big difference is going to be you always had those fines, but typically when things were worked out, say in training camp, Aaron Donald a couple of years ago, then you were allowed to roll back the fines, an organization. So essentially the player knew, ultimately when I come in, I'm not going to have to pay that money because the teams could roll it back. Now you're not going to be able to do that in theory. So it's going to eliminate the few holdouts that they are. And in Malcolm's case, if that was his plan to hold out in training camp, it's not going to be a viable plan. But remember, from his standpoint, if the Eagles don't rework his deal, he said he's not going to play. So it would be more of a retirement situation anyway. And ultimately, I do think they work something out. So I don't think it's going to come to that.
Well, that one I find interesting. And, because it says they would also become mandatory for players on their second contract. Currently, teams often wipe away fines once they end up coming to camp. But it would also lose an accrued season towards free agency by failing to show up for camp or on time, essentially. So if you're holding out, that you're trying to accrue, that they're wiping that away. Again, I don't understand why the players would say, yeah, that sounds good to me, but
well, it's not good, but remember, training camp is getting rolled back as a whole to begin with, and they want to eliminate the holdouts, and there's no real reason for them. It used to be in the old days, rookies would hold out, especially first-round picks, before you had what essentially is the scale system that they have now. So that kind of eliminated from a rookie standpoint. So the few guys who do hold out tend to be veteran players who outperform their contracts, star players like Aaron Donald. And they don't want that headache in training camp. And I guess the theory is training camp is going to be scaled back to such a degree you might as well show up and kick up your feet anyway.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4 with Johnny Mac. You referenced Tom Brady. Jeff Darlington said this morning, quote, I'm now at the point where I would be stunned if dramatic pause, if Tom Brady went back to New England. I mean, that's about as, I was on WEEI's website last night, and they have a Tom Brady decision countdown clock. I mean, I know we're in Philly, South Jersey, and this might not seem as – this is an epic decision. This is Tom Brady we're talking about. This is maybe the greatest quarterback all time deciding that he might change teams after being on the same team for his entire career. I know he's maybe not the same player, but this is gigantic decision that is coming up here. And now you got somebody dropping that bomb that you're at the point where you'd be stunned if he goes back there. I think that's pretty interesting information.
Well, I think the more interesting information is you can kind of figure out that Don Yee showed up yesterday in Indy, and he's friends with Jeff Darlington. That's what that means. Doesn't mean anything more than that. And they're trying to generate interest to get as much money as possible. And I just explained to you that the New England Patriots aren't going to enter into negotiations till they know what the the rules are. So that's that part of it. So that's just the nature of it. You drum up interest, and I would be stunned. And mark this, Josh. I would be stunned. Tom Brady's not on the New England Patriots.
You would be stunned if he wasn't on the New England Patriots.
Yes.
Fires right back at Jeff Darlington.
Well, yeah. As I said, Don Yee showed up. That's Tom Brady's agent, for those who don't know.
Okay.
And he was scheduled to show up Wednesday in Indianapolis. He showed up Wednesday, and you hear all the talk. It doesn't take a genius to figure out where it's coming from.
Right. Now, this is interesting because I had these notes earlier in the week to talk about. We never really got to them, but I will bring this one up, which was on the Rich Eisen show last week. Adam Schefter stated that he expected the Titans to be in the mix, something we brought up for Tom Brady. Now, Jeff Darlington basically said the Titans are the favorites and that the likelihood of destinations are Titans number 1, Raiders number 2, Patriots number 3, and Schefter added the Chargers to the discussions as a long shot. Now, that was last week, but adding to that, so you're essentially kind of reading Darlington, handicapping at Titans, blah, 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 is that the agent is trying to drive up the price for New England, but that's really where he wants to be.
Yeah. Now, let me say, where does he want to be? Maybe he wants to be in Los Angeles. I mean, because we talked about LeBron James a lot in the NBA when people thought the Sixers had a chance, which was ludicrous. There's something about being in Los Angeles from a brand standpoint, and LeBron always wanted to do that. Tom could want to do that. So from things outside of football, there could be other destinations. I wouldn't think Nashville would be one of them. Obvious there is that you have the Patriots stamp in the front office, and obviously Mike Vrabel as the head coach as well, with a Patriots background as a player. So that's where that comes from. But they want Ryan Tannehill back. I mean, it's like I said before, if in Tennessee especially, that's a good team. Now, they have some decisions to make in important positions, not only Ryan Tannehill, who had a career year, but also Derrick Henry. And how do you sort of judiciously figure out, do you want to pay a running back at a devalued position? So they have a lot of difficult decisions to make. But ultimately, it's a really good team. And you want to start over with a 43-year-old quarterback? I've said this time and time again. There are certain organizations that have a need from a business standpoint. The Chargers would be most notable from that aspect, where they literally need to sell tickets. So from a business standpoint, it would make sense for them to want Tom Brady, because you got instant sellouts, instant merchandising bumps, all that kind of stuff. from a team like Nashville, Tennessee, that doesn't need it, it just makes no sense.
Yeah.
People, and hey, look, it is what it is. That's what agents do. And I don't know if Jeff knows or he doesn't know or if he's doing a favor for an agent. I don't know him that well, but it is what it is.
All right, a couple other things. Josina Anderson is back, reporting the Giants and Colts are among teams that potentially have interest in Jadeveon Clowney. Chances that
Wouldn't it be great if the Giants got Jadeveon Clowney?
Really, right? I mean, you get to see him twice in the same year. If Seattle makes a trade to get him, are they not interested in bringing him back?
Well, they didn't give up a ton to get him, remember, because of all the issues. So it's not like they gave up first-round pick and were paying him significant money because Houston was paying part of the contract. So from that standpoint, it's not typical in a typical situation if you get a high-profile player that you're paying a lot of money, even for half a season. You would really want to certainly get them back. So there are some other circumstances that can point in that different direction. He's a tough guy because he's a great player, but he's got a ton of injury history. You don't know if he's going to be healthy. He's coming off the core muscle injury. He's going to get paid, but I think there's going to be some skepticism in a lot of places compared to his talent, because his talent is off the charts. It's got a lot of things you got to get through, starting with those injuries.
All right, let's look at this one I find to be interesting too, which is Dave Gettleman said the team is open for business as it pertains to trading the number 4 overall pick. Smart move for New York to trade the 4 or continue to build on what they got? Saquon Barkley, a quarterback, and then you had the 4th pick.
Well, remember, everybody's open for business because of Tua and the injury. Even Washington is going to bring in the quarterbacks to make people think that they would go in a different direction at number 2 overall, hoping a desperate quarterback team will trade up and they could get more of a haul and get the player they wanted, which will be the best player in the draft in Chase Young anyway. So everybody's open for business and everybody's crossing their fingers. And we talked about the medicals, and everything is positive so far. And that means somebody's going to want to trade up to get a quarterback, whether it's number 3, number 4, or even number 2. So you're going to hear that from this point till draft night. Is everybody trying to convince somebody else to trade up so they can get more of a haul?
Okay, report that the NFL Combine indicating that Phillip Rivers is going to go with the Colts. Now, we've kind of mentioned them as a spot, but is that the best fit for Rivers? You kind of mentioned it the other day. He's moved and all that stuff, but, the Colts with him, do they look at themselves as, we could have been a Super Bowl team with Luck. We're not a Super Bowl team with Brissett. Not that Brissett's not any good. We're just a good team, not a great team. And Rivers, if we have a window of a year or two, let's take it with Rivers.
Yeah, I think that's their thought process. I don't necessarily like it because I think Phillip took a big step back last year. So that's number 1. That's my biggest concern. So I don't think he's going to step in and give him really that much more improved play than Jacoby Brissett, who's still a young player and is still growing. And remember, that was terrible timing. Remember how late Andrew Luck retired. It wasn't like Jacoby had an entire off season to prepare, and he knew he was a starting quarterback. I don't know if I agree with Indianapolis' thinking, but they're the ones that see him every day, Jacoby Brissett I'm talking about. And if they don't think he's a legitimate starting quarterback, well, they know better than anybody else, and then you have to go out and get somebody. So that, to me, indicates where they are. I just don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl contender with Phillip Rivers.
All right, one more before we roll out here. Speaking with, I didn't speak to Mike Mayock, but he admitted the team is open to replacing Derek Carr. They're not committed to him. But then today, you had the head coach come out, John Gruden, and he praised Derek Carr. So which one is it? Praising Carr or trying to get rid of Carr?
Trying to get rid of Carr. I've told you on this show for over a year, John Gruden can't stand Derek Carr, and that's just his history. I mean, it's not even necessarily more than that. I mean, John Gruden's a guy who loves quarterbacks one day and then gets them for a week and hates them, and that's where he is with Derek Carr. And he's that guy. He's the grass is always greener guy. No matter what he has, he thinks the next guy is better, and then he gets to the next guy and he hates him as well. And that's exactly what's going to happen. A lot of people are trying to marry Marcus Mariota to Oakland, Las Vegas. I'm going to say that 100 times over the next year or so. But everybody is trying to say potentially Mariota. I don't think they're going to get Tom Brady, obviously. And then to try to spin off and try to trade Derek Carr. But remember, there's so many quarterbacks available this offseason. Not only free agency, but also the draft. And you only have a certain amount of jobs open. And you just saw, we talked about Indianapolis. If that's Phillip Rivers. If Tom Brady goes to New England, or even if he goes to Tennessee, and Jeff Darlington's right, well, that closes the Titans. Then who's going to New England? Maybe have Ryan Tannehill. Maybe have Andy Dalton. People have speculated. Maybe even Marcus Mariota up there. But the point is, you only have a finite amount of openings. Tampa Bay, if they re-sign Jameis Winston. Teddy Bridgewater's agent is out there saying he's going to get $30 million. From who? There aren't that many open jobs, and there are too many names. So it's going to be difficult to trade somebody like Derek Carr, who's overpaid and isn't very good, to be honest.
All right, Football at 4, Johnny Mack. He'll be back tomorrow as we continue. Combine is going on. More NFL news comes from that. We'll break it all down. And, of course, he, like all guys, appear to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Follow him on Twitter at JF McMullen. Football at 4 in the books for Thursday. Thank you, pal.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, man. Johnny Mack is back tomorrow with Football at 4 for you guys out there.